Matt, have you seen Picard Season 1?
It is only logical.
Sam, have you seen Picard Season 1?
Affirmative.
We've all seen Picard Season 1. It's time for spoilers. Engage. Hey everyone, this is Chris from Antimatter Games. I'm joined by Matt.
Hi.
And Sam.
Hi.
Today we're going to be talking to you about Picard Season 1. We're going to be going in depth. It's going to be a spoiler cast, just be warned. We're going to be talking about the first episode, the last episode, everything in between. First, I'd like to start with our favorite Jean-Luc Picard quotes. So we each picked one, and we're going to rattle them off for you.
Let's have Sam go first.
Okay. I like that idea.
Sure. I would love to. So my favorite quote is from Picard to Data in one episode where Data is having some issues with Riker and being bested by him. And the quote is, "It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose."
Is he besting him at poker?
No spoilers.
Do you remember what the game is?
No, not in a while.
They had the little fish guy, and he was like...
All right, go ahead, Matt.
This one also, for Picard-related reasons, ties into Data. This was when Data made Lal his, I guess, first child. Let the spoilers begin. And Picard was being ordered to hand over the child to Starfleet. There are times, sir, when men of good conscience cannot blindly follow orders. You acknowledge their sentience, but ignore their personal liberties and freedom. Order a man to hand his child over to the state, not while I'm his captain. And Picard,
Excellent. When I was looking for Picard quotes, that one came up a lot, like first hit kind of thing. All right, mine is from one of the movies. This one, like, for some reason, is just seared into my brain, even though I've watched most of the movies like a long time ago, except for me and Matt watched the first one.
No, First Contact, which is the second.
Second one. Okay, so everything else has been like forever ago, but this one's always like rattling around in my brain. All right, ready? Here we go. The line must be drawn here, this far, no further.
Yeah.
See.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a great scene in general.
Super good. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I have three simple questions for you guys. I'll ask them to you each in turn. Do you love Star Trek, Matt?
Yes. Yes, I do. I've watched every episode of Star Trek across all series.
Sam, do you love Star Trek?
Except for the animated.
Yes. Not all of it, but chunks of it.
Most of it.
Most of it.
So do you really love
Matt,
Star Trek?
Do you love Jean-Luc Picard?
He's like a father figure.
Sam, do you love Jean-Luc Picard?
Yes, he's the best captain.
I would agree. And lastly, Matt, did you love Picard Season 1?
I did. I really did. I was in
Sam,
100%.
I liked most of it.
And I'm a little farther south than Sam on that. So let's start from there. I want to start with episode 1 of the series. Now, leading into Picard, I was excited, to say the least. Jean-Luc Picard is one of my favorite TV protagonists that I can think of. You know, I watched Star Trek Next Generation religiously when I was growing up. I would come home from school and watch it every day after school. I've rewatched it many times since then. So when they announced the Picard series, I was very excited, and so were the rest of us, right?
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Super hyped.
And this was coming off of Star Trek Discovery Season 2, which was fantastic. Like some of the best Star Trek I've ever seen, and that's saying a lot. So I was excited for Picard. So cut to the first episode. At the end of this episode, I still felt very good about the show.
Mhm.
You know, they set it up nicely. We had Picard retired from the Federation. He was chilling on his vineyard in France. He had some Romulan, I don't know if they're servants or friends. I think they're people he liberated.
Housemates.
Yeah, they're people he liberated.
Come chill with me.
We find out that there has been a synthetic attack on Mars. And when I say synthetics, I mean people like Lieutenant Commander Data, so androids. And then because of that, synthetics have been outlawed in the Federation.
Mhm.
And we catch up with one of our main protagonists, who is a female and just happens to be synthetic. Now she's in trouble, and someone tells her to find Picard. And that's kind of how this series gets going. They go on this, like, you know, Hobbit-esque adventure. They set off. Now, what did you guys think about the first episode? Give me your feelings when it ended, no farther.
Oh, I mean, I really enjoyed the first time I watched that episode. I had to pause a few times and just like react, because, like, you know, when I saw like the dream sequence on the Enterprise with Data and they're playing cards and everything, like after that, I was just like, I needed a moment to process that. That was just so good.
Yeah.
There were several moments in that I thought were just so great. I really liked Daj. I really liked pretty much everything about that episode. Like,
Mhm.
I was just blown away, and I was 100% in, and that never really wore off for me.
It was a really good start.
Yeah.
And I felt exactly the same way. Seeing Picard talking to Commander Data, I teared up, man. It got me right in the feels. I love those two characters, and I would say that about every scene with them in the whole series was just fantastic.
Mhm.
Like, the writing was fantastic, and they did an amazing job acting it. Yeah, so I love that stuff for sure. And even, you know, you're reminded of how good of an actor Patrick Stewart is. I think there's the scene where he gets interviewed, right? And
Yeah.
the interviewer
Oh,
starts
yeah.
asking him hard questions about the decisions he made and leaving the Federation, and he gets really impassioned and angry, and you're like,
Oh, it was
holy
great.
God, Patrick Stewart can act, man.
Yeah.
Well, that was never in doubt.
The first episode was really good. It was the only one that I actually watched twice. So, like, we watched it the night it came out and then watched it again the next day, and had such high hopes. Like, I wanted to know more about the story. I wanted to see more Picard. I wanted to see more of this new kind of world and new tone that they were putting together. So the first one was amazing. 10 out of 10.
Right. So I think pretty clear across the board. That's how we all feel. Now, at the end of the first episode, the synth that you're introduced to, the woman, she's killed. So the person that you think is going to be kind of like...
Well, just before the end.
Just before the end.
Yeah.
So the person that's introduced that you think is going to be Picard's companion and like tag along, she's dead.
Mm-hmm.
And then we find out that she has a sister.
Yes.
Forward. Right. And where's her sister?
She's on a massive Borg cube, which is what it ends with. And that was also a fantastic moment, like when they zoom out at the very end of the episode through the Borg cube and really, for the first time, get this massive... I mean, TNG and the movies got pretty close, but I think like that is definitely the grandest sense of scale you get ever of a Borg cube. Like, it's zooming out, and you think it's going to go out into space because you start seeing ships. But those ships are just like in a small part of it, and it keeps going and going and going. And it's like, holy hell, Borg cubes are massive.
Yeah, for me, that was one of the big positives of the season. And like going into it, I was looking forward to the Borg stuff the most because they tease it in the trailer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do we think moving forward from there? Because episode 2, you start to get introduced to what's going to become Picard's crew.
Yeah, I think at this point, we should probably... They jump around a lot after this point, so I think we shouldn't go like episode by episode.
No. So I don't want to go like episode 2, 3, 4, 5 all the way through. Let's just get into it now.
So of all the new members of the crew, Captain Rios and his holograms I really liked. Probably more the holograms than Captain Rios, if I'm being honest. I love the idea that there were just different accented versions of him for different roles. And they were always just, they brought a little levity. So I liked the ship. Wouldn't say it's like exactly like the large. Eventually there was a bit of a payoff for like Rios's past. I mean, I should say, before we go any further, I take this whole thing as like a 10-part movie. And I think that the rollout really hurt it, like waiting week for week. I think this show was basically meant for a streaming service and meant to be binged. And it hurt to watch it part by part. But yeah, I liked him. I did eventually grow to like Dr. Girardi, though I'm really not. There's going to have to be some follow-up for what happened this season, next season with her.
So my feeling on the captain is a little different. I can't remember if it was the second episode or not, but when they introduce his AI companion on the ship with the British accent, that's the first guy, right?
Yes.
That counterpart. I was super into that guy. I liked his attitude. He reminded me of the Doctor from Voyager.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of vibes. So I was really into him. I like that a lot.
I believe is rumored to be coming in season 2, by the way.
Okay. I could get into his other alter egos as well. I didn't like the captain at all. Like, as much as they tried to make me, I could not get into the captain. I just zero feelings for him.
Well, what do you think that was?
I didn't find his character very compelling. Like, none of the backstory they gave and like his turmoil or anything, none of it really grabbed me. I was too invested in Picard specifically. What are you thinking, Sam?
I found the issue that I had with the cast was, besides Picard, none of the rest of the crew is particularly likable. Like, I don't care for their backstories. They feel like they all kind of have some weird, I don't know, like they're just like these badasses that like have nothing to prove, but you do. Like, you're on a crew with Picard. We love Picard. I need to know more about you to like you. But having, oh my God, what's the girl's name? I can't remember what her name is.
Which one?
The snake drugs girl?
The one who always calls him JL.
Raffi.
Oh, that's, yeah.
Raffi. Yeah. Can't stand her.
She has no business calling him JL.
No, come on.
She doesn't. You know what? She might have thought that she's earned that right to do that. Maybe
she did.
Off scene, she hasn't to me. I don't know who this is. She just comes in with this attitude, and I find none of the crew was likable. I didn't care what happened to any of them. I just wanted their scenes to end so we could go back to Picard. The episodes and the scenes that I loved were all the old crew, which just so happens the episodes that Jonathan Frakes was in, he directed those ones as well, and he's an amazing director. So it just felt like these. It's like when you've been watching a show for many, many seasons and they introduce a new character and this character starts acting like they've been there the whole time, and you're like, whoa, calm down. You need to earn my liking you. I don't know you. And I felt by the end of the 10 episodes, I still don't care what happens to any of them. I'd be cool if the season 2 just started up with Picard and nobody else.
I think that was my biggest issue with how
What about Elnor?
How they handled the crew. There was zero exposition and zero context given for any of like their feelings towards Picard and their relationships. It was just kind of like, this is how it is, and that's it.
Well, it's not like they had 7 28-episode seasons to build it up like TNG, but they should have. They should have introduced less crew members and built it up slower. You know.
I think we need to get away from these 10-episode miniseries. I hate it. Like, when I see the show's only 10 episodes, I'm like, if it's 10 episodes, it's 10 hours of content. You could have cut this down to a 3-hour movie, or give me enough and make it an actual full season. I'd rather watch something that's 24 episodes and actually learn the characters, get to know them, instead of just oh, here's the crew, you're supposed to like them.
Yeah. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, no, I think there was like a lot. It was a little more subtle, but I think there was actually some pretty good. I mean, some of the characters were intentionally mysterious, like Rios, right? Like, you know that something happened that made him leave Starfleet. You know he had that. There was something there. They don't tell you that. They kind of hint at it, and it's like a reveal at the end that he had actually run into these exact synthetics before. And then his captain killed one, and then he went after the captain, who he really admired for kind of betraying the values he thought, and he went after him so hard the captain killed himself in front of him, which, you don't want to win an argument that well. So, like, I liked that little story, and I thought, like, for what he does, that was an adequate amount of backstory. That's a jumping off point. I feel like everyone on the ship is in their own way a little damaged and seeking redemption in some way or another, much like Picard. And that's why I think they made a good crew. They only had very little screen time, so I don't think there's any way in 10 episodes they could have been developed, and I don't think that there was enough going on in season 1 to extend to 28 episodes. I think basically you just have to, like, it is what it is, and I like what it is, basically.
I think that the 10 episode formula now is just kind of the way things are, as far as streaming service series go.
I'm done with TV then.
We're not getting 28 half an hour episode long series anymore. It's just not. It's not the way it goes. I just finished Better Call Saul. It was 10 episodes. Westworld is 8 episodes. Like, it's just the way things are now.
It is, and it's also. I mean, when you look at it, so much of what we know about TNG crew is because of the same responses they give every single time. It's not those like episodes where they go different and we learn something about a character. The TNG crew we knew because of their kind of cookie cutter responses. I think instead of having 28 episodes where a lot of things are the same, like episode to episode, and there's only like minor differences. I just don't think that would work that much anymore. And I also think that we're overselling the character development in TNG a bit. Like, there was so much of it.
Sorry, go ahead.
There was so much of it that, like, they introduce little tiny bits about a character over literally hundreds of episodes. And then we leave with this, like, thing. But we're coming into a fresh series, fresh characters. Even if they'd done 28 episodes, we would nowhere be near the level of character development that TNG had, because we grew up with it, and it was like 7 28 episode seasons. Like, there's just no way at this point that it's fair to compare this crew to the TNG crew.
No, and I'm not at all. I'm thinking of Picard crew all on its own. I'm not comparing them to the Next Generation. That would be completely unfair.
Yeah.
I think Next Generation, they didn't really focus a lot on the specific characters. Like, they had their own episodes every now and then, but each episode was kind of its own thing and about that specific narrative, and all of the crew was just kind of along for the ride on most of those episodes.
And they all reset at the end of the episode, essentially.
Exactly, yeah.
This actually allowed things to develop.
Yeah. So, Sam, we've talked a lot about the crew and Picard himself.
We haven't talked about Elnor.
Let's cut to the Borg and the Romulans and the android sister. I can't remember her name. The one on the cube.
Oh, Soji.
Soji.
So what did you think of Soji's narrative and the Romulan trying to get information out of her, play her? You know what I mean?
Sexy Romulan.
Yeah, he like sexed her up real good there to try and get her to talk.
It was very interesting. I liked it. I thought the whole, I guess it's not really a subplot. It's the whole plot with the androids and everything. It didn't feel at any point in time like Star Trek. So it was cool that they were called Romulans and that they were on like a Borg cube and all this stuff. But I remember sitting there about 4 or 5 episodes in and turning to Mark and going, "Oh, so this is Battlestar Galactica." And just watching the rest of it through the lens of Battlestar Galactica. which I think is kind of where I lost interest for the rest of this series.
Fair comparison.
Because I was like, okay, I know where this is going to go. I've seen this story 100 times. I did like the portrayal of the Romulans a lot. I think it's the best and almost like the most we've seen of them, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
I loved having 7 of 9 back. That was exciting. But that was also just another, like, my favorite parts of the show were from other shows and characters that I've already grown to love. Yeah, I liked it, but it didn't feel Star Trek at any point.
I got chills when she hooked up to the cube.
Battlestar Galactica with Star Trek, with a Star Trek skin.
So I gotta say, for me, the angle that Romulan tried to play or get information out of Soji by sleeping with her is kind of played out, and I'm surprised in 2020 they wrote that angle, that because she's a woman that this man could romance her and then get what he wanted out of her. Like, that's a little surprising. I didn't buy that at all, that this, she's supposed to be a hyper intelligent android, better than humankind, and he just sexed her up.
Well, he didn't quite. I wouldn't say he just sexed her up. I think he kind of like got in there and earned her trust, but then used that to like play on her insecurities and her self-doubts. It was the whole, like, there was weird stuff happening. Like when he feeds her that little tidbit about how every single call with her mom is the exact same length, and then just waits for her to like look into that and get freaked out by that, and then come and be like, I can help. And because like he's giving her information about herself she doesn't even know. So I think that like he earned her, like, the sex aside, he earned her trust and then betrayed it remarkably. Like I remember leading up to this, at certain points I was like, is it gonna flip the other way? Is he gonna actually fall in love and like betray his mission to try and actually help her? And I actually was like on the fence with that until he straight up tried to murder her with some kind of death cube. But also, side note,
I felt like it was just checking off a box.
I love every scene.
To have some sexual content in here.
Yeah, probably.
You have 7 of 9. What else do you need?
7 of 9 is yeah. Well, we'll get back to that. Yeah, but a side note: every time a version of Soji or Daj activated, love those scenes.
Yeah.
When she just started like pounding through the floor, and I'm just I was just like, oh shit. And then they can just see her moving through the cube, and it's like she's moving way too fast, drops through the ceiling. It's just like, I was really looking for a little more android beatdown, if I'm being honest. That first
there wasn't much.
That first fight scene in the very first episode, when she's just taking out all the Romulans before she gets the goo and explodes, it was pretty sweet.
I wish there had been more of that. I definitely checked out any of the 2 scenes with Soji and the Romulan guy. I was just like, this is the same. This has been the same scene over and over for the last 8 episodes.
I feel the same, and I was happy when that arc was wrapped up and they moved on from that guy.
Yeah.
And she joined with Picard and the crew, and
Yeah.
So just to focus on some positives,
like Elnor.
Okay, go ahead, Matt.
All right. I loved the Elnor character, not just for who he was, but for the fact that Picard finally had something close to family. Picard has always been a very solitary figure, and like there was that whole kind of arc in TNG where like he despised Wesley, and then he started to warm up to Wesley, but then Wesley went off and became like a traveler or something. That one never really got a payoff. So I really like the idea that Picard was trying to, when he was helping the Romulans during the crisis, he kind of became a father figure to this outcast, this the only boy in this like warrior nun Romulan warrior cast, right?
They were really cool.
They were really cool, and the fact that he comes back, and this guy is like the like Romulans and Vulcans are related, but this guy is the polar opposite of the Vulcans. Instead of like no emotion, just totally candid about emotion, not even trying to hide it, borderline incapable of lying.
He seemed very like robotic in a lot of his actions.
I mean, it's like, but in like not in a overthought and like conditioned response way, in like he's just so instinctive, you know, like if he feels something, he says it. There's no, what you see is what you get with him. And he has this almost like childlike innocence to him, but he's also just a straight murder machine. And I liked that like combination a lot.
He was Drax from Guardians.
Yeah, kinda.
A little bit, but not as funny. Drax is hilarious.
No, not as funny.
and I will admit, like, that actually did start to like get to me, like especially in the end when Picard dies. Elnor's reaction was the only one that really got me.
Mm-hmm.
And also kind of tied into that Raffi thing, which gave her some, and then she kind of, I don't know, it's almost like she became his mom and Picard's his dad. I don't know. I liked it. I really liked it for what it is.
Let's jump to another positive here, because I'm getting flooded with negative emotions as we talk about that. In that of that arc, Lore shows up from the Next Generation. Not Lore.
No.
Hugh. Sorry, Hugh.
Yeah. Very different.
Yeah, the Borg that they encounter in the Next Generation and kind of rescue.
Yeah.
He is on the Borg cube and he's kind of in charge of things there.
Yeah.
So it was really cool to see him again. Same actor, yeah. And it was a fun little moment. It took me like a few minutes to really realize who he was. And then I was like, oh shit, that's Hugh. He was pretty great in the series for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
What did you guys think of that?
I loved that. I love the XB angle in general. I like knowing that something happened to Hugh other than, because he had a rough go of things. I liked seeing him. I didn't like seeing him go, but
yeah, he does go. Just,
yeah.
This is a spoiler talk. And what did you think?
It took me a very long time to figure out who it was. I knew him from somewhere, but just could not place it until the end of the episode, or until they kind of talked about his time in the show. I didn't really know the character that well. I've seen his episodes, but if you had asked me anything about his time in the previous series, I was like, I don't know. I know him though from somewhere. So it was nice to kind of get introduced to the character. And then I ended up going back and watching some old episodes with him in it and being like, oh yeah, okay, that's really, really cool that he's in here. But I liked having him in here. Once again, it was my favorite parts of this show was stuff from TNG.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Me as well. Pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Skipping to another positive on that note, near the end when Riker shows up and like helps Picard and he gives his speech and everything, that was another really high moment of the series for me. Like I same thing. I teared up listening to him talk, and that was just so good. Definitely one of the biggest highs of that show for me.
Yeah.
I was happy about that, because I also felt like a little disappointed by his first appearance. I like when they go to the planet and he's there with Troy and all that. I thought that was cool. I thought it was neat that his kid's name was Thad, because Thaddeus Riker was Riker's Civil War descendant that came up in an episode. Q was involved. There was a lot of little like naming tips of the hat there. It was interesting.
It's interesting that you didn't like that one as much as like the next time he showed up, because for me, that little scene when they're at Riker and Troy's house, that was my favorite part of the entire series. That episode when they were there. And it just felt, it was like the first time that it felt like Star Trek, where it wasn't this like heavy dark tone. It was the end of an episode where like it reset and it was happy at the end. And like you had this sense of like there is some hope. Like things are going to happen. Things are going to be okay. And it had this sense of well-being that you get when you watch TNG. Like TNG, when you're sick, you just want to sit on a couch and wrap up in a blanket and watch TNG, and you feel better. And like I want to feel good and have those feels. And I had that with those episodes, and I loved them. And then it was like we immediately went back into this like dark plot, and you're like, and we're back on Galactica. Okay. So I love those episodes.
Well, actually,
the most.
The thing is, like I said, like I view it as like a 10-part movie.
Yeah.
I feel that if you take those like 10 parts, you get the same arc over those 10 parts that you would get in a TNG episode. It's just, it has to be dark for like 8 of them. But like it ended very hopeful, right?
Yeah.
And like the ending, no one fired a shot. You had this massive like 2 fleets lined up. Everyone wants to kill each other. No one dies. So I feel like you got in part 10 at the very end that TNG conclusion. It's just like, you know, you get that weird like right before but we also had those moments where like right before it cuts to whatever, it's like he's dead, Captain, and all of a sudden there's like darkness in TNG, you know? So like it's just those dark spots lasted several episodes instead of like several minutes. But like I feel like the arc was about the same, and you get that little hopeful uptick before things get serious, and that was the trip to Rikers. But no, it's not that I didn't like it so much. It just it felt like half of a good meal, you know.
And you know what? That probably plays to your previous point about having it week to week as opposed to being able to binge it. Because I think if we had binged it, I would have watched probably the first 5 episodes. So started out on that super high note of the first episode, and then stopped halfway through when they're at Riker's house, and then picked up on the second episode where they're at the house, and then finished the series. And that probably would have had a really good feeling, as opposed to probably 5 or 6 of those episodes. The episode ends, and you're just like,
I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure if you watch the first 5 episodes, you'd end on the first 7 episode, which was probably the darkest for each episode.
I think that would have helped a lot for me too, just from a narrative angle, because I can't remember what episode it was, but it ends with the scientist killing doctors that they're looking for.
Bruce Maddox.
She kills him right at the end. This was like her lover or whatever, and he was super important, and they were trying really hard to find him, and she just kills him, and they leave it there. But there's been no setup or context given as to why she might kill this man.
Yeah.
I mean, that was an intentional choice, right?
So it's not.
They wanted you to be like, "What the fuck?"
To see, I wasn't like, "What the fuck?" I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Okay, sure. And then I had to wait a whole week to find out what happened, but they didn't actually. It was like 2 or 3 episodes past that where we find out the context of that event. Yeah. So if I had been able to watch like from episode 1 to 6, like to binge it, which I would have done, then I feel like that would have had a lot more impact, or at least it would have bothered me a lot less, because that was the pivotal part of the series.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I felt so stupid after being like, why would she have done that? And then they're like, mind meld, brainwashing. And I'm like, oh, right, Star Trek. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
It makes sense.
It was a bit of a hand wave. It was a bit of a hand wave, but as soon as they dropped it, it's like, why didn't I even think of that? Like, right? Because I was always a little suspicious. You see her with O, like she's listening to music, watching some stuff. Little thing, she's listening to the I can't remember the species, the opera that Hugh and whatchamacallit from Discovery.
Yeah.
Anyways, and then she shows up, and she's clearly bad news. And then all of a sudden, she shows up, like almost at the exact same time as a hit squad at Picard's chateau, and it's like, this is fishy. Like, yeah.
There was definitely like a little bit of lead up to it, but not enough. Like it definitely felt like it was completely out of place. And I finished that episode thinking like, I don't know if the writers know where this is going.
Yeah,
like, it just seems like it's starting to go off the rails, and I don't know what's happening.
As someone who watched a lot of Star Trek Enterprise, I had faith of the heart. So I trusted the writers to know where they were going with this, and I feel like that mostly paid off. Speaking of which, Enterprise, very underrated Star Trek. Only 4 seasons. I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it.
Let's talk about.
No, it's really good. It's really good. Your loss. I'm just saying, it's really good.
I was looking forward to some Q Continuum action here. It was one of my biggest hopes for the season, and I'm really surprised they didn't touch on it at all. Like, even an Easter egg. You know what I mean? Like, nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Did
like,
that surprise you guys?
Not really. Like, I was kind of hoping, but I also know that, like, so I did reading around this, right? Mm-hmm. I, like, looked up interviews and everything. Like, I knew it wasn't going to be TNG right off the bat because of an interview with Patrick Stewart where he's like, I have absolutely no desire to do anything TNG related ever again. They actually only took the meeting that led to this happening to say no in person, because they knew they put a lot of effort into Picard, and he had absolutely no, like, he specifically, actually, if I may take a quote from this interview. Here's precisely how much Patrick Stewart missed Jean-Luc Picard, and how much he missed playing one of Star Trek's most iconic characters. Not at all, the former Star Trek Next Generation actor said, shaking his head side to side for emphasis. He had
think about
no desire.
That character, you know?
Yeah, and he was just done with it. It was the fact that Picard was what it was and was so different. That's the only reason we got it. If it was anything close to TNG, never would have happened. And also, so for Q, like, John Delancey's just like, Q's supposed to be immortal. I have clearly aged. I'm not doing it. And he's been slightly, he's like, no, I have no reason to believe I will ever play Q again. It doesn't make sense.
He could have totally done it, though, and been like, oh, you know, some Star Trek reason, I look old now. And you'd be like, okay, cool.
No, I mean, he actually did that in TNG. One time he showed up with, like, the ear horn and everything. He's like, watch that, Sonny, you know, like, classic Q.
You know what? I don't buy that argument, Matt, because you know who looks old? Data. Brent Spiner looks old as hell in this. It's clear that he's a much chunkier Brent Spiner.
Well, that was actually...
That's with the makeup.
And there was some CG. There was some CG.
I love Data, for sure, but, like, clearly much older. So I think they could have got away with Q and explained it away somehow.
Yeah.
I know he's not in there, but,
that's,
you know,
that's totally fine. Like, if it's, like, bringing back an actor, like, I said this about the Han Solo movie, and I'm like, I would have just rather you cast the original Han Solo, and we'll just pretend he's young. Like, I want to see that actor. Like, we'll just put on blinders. So I don't think the actor's coming back and looking older. Like, I don't feel like they need to explain it.
I'm 24.
Like, no, you look older. It's
Get
okay.
off my blade. All right, let's start to wrap this up. I want to get just our favorite moments each from the series.
Oh, okay.
Starting with you, Matt.
No, let Sam go first. I'm probably going to talk way too long.
I really like when they're at Riker and Troy's place, and him and Picard are just having that conversation, just the two of them, and Picard's explaining, like, he's like, I'm not going to say anything, and Riker's like, look, I already know what's going on, and he explains everything, and he's like, yep, I know you're going to do this, and you're going to do this, and there's no way I can stop you, and everything, and it just felt like such a good moment, and that I was sitting there with, like, tears just streaming down my face, and it just felt like it had so much heart to that scene, and that's what I wanted out of the show. So many of the rest of the scenes, they were cool. They might have, like, great dialogue, great visuals, but a lot of it felt very empty, and very cold, where I just didn't feel anything for the characters, for the scene, what was going on. So that was definitely, like, my favorite moment of the show, and, like, that scene in particular, just the two of them having that little moment of connection, with Riker being like, you don't have to say anything. Like, I know you better than anybody.
Yeah.
It was great. I loved it.
What about you, Matt?
Oh, we're only doing one?
Yeah, just your top moment.
Top moment?
Like, okay.
Oh, no, I can do a few. But very, very quickly. I loved every moment with Picard and his Romulan housemates, specifically the Irish one, and when she would just like snap at either her husband or Picard. I mean, I assume they're married. I don't, or like a couple. I don't know.
She was very reminiscent of Troy for some reason.
Yeah, but she was just so sharp. You know, like every time Picard, oh, this doesn't work. Yeah, that's what we wanted you to think, and then it like works flawlessly. When the hit squad shows up and you realize, of course, like 2 ex-Tal Shiars have guns stashed literally everywhere in Picard's house. They're pulling them out of bookcases and under desks, and it's like, of course, I love them. I was really kind of disappointed we didn't get to see them again after they left.
That was a great scene, and I was really bummed they didn't end up on the crew. I figured for sure they're going to come with them.
Season 2.
These 2 warriors, you know?
Yeah.
And his dog. They should have brought his dog.
You can't bring doggos into space.
That's not true. Captain Archer did it. Captain Archer had a beagle for Porthos for all of Enterprise.
And Data had a cat.
Yeah.
Spot.
Oh yeah, and Spot 2. Can we just acknowledge there was a Spot 2? Yeah, I like that. I really, really liked when Seven hooked herself up to the cube. Marginal CG notwithstanding, I can just completely ignore that, because that moment, like, you know, she doesn't want to do that, and she's torn between her like kind of protective instinct towards Borg who have been through what she's been through, and her loathing of the Borg, and she has to make that compromise. And I think even though nothing much came of it, that one moment, I'm sure that's setting something up for season 2. I'm 100%. Like, the Borg are not going to disappear. Yeah, and the last, definitely Picard and Data's final conversation.
Oh yeah.
That's what I was there for.
Yeah.
So for me,
and the fact that Data imagined Picard there at the end, that got me.
Yeah. So for me, honorable mention to Riker showing up and giving his like epic speech. That made me tear up big time. And also, I guess second place would go to the end when Picard and Data have their final talk, and Data asks him to kill him, essentially, or to at least eliminate his consciousness on the drive. That was great and very meaningful and emotional. But I think number one for me was when Picard is sitting across from Soji, the android, and they're having that talk about if he thinks Commander Data loved him.
Oh yeah, that was so good.
And man, you know, you get back to that Patrick Stewart, his acting chops are so good. And I found, you know, for all the shortfalls that I found the series had, that scene was so wonderfully written and performed, and it was just hugely impactful for me.
Hold on. I want to throw some credit out to Issa Yornes? The person who played Soji. She was actually pretty great. And another little thing, when Data's going out at the end, and that song Blue Skies, that was her singing.
Oh, okay.
Oh, cool.
She's got a really good voice.
She's definitely on my list of positives.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So really quick and just for fun, let's all give our scores out of 10 for the season. Sam, go ahead.
I will give it a 7.
Okay.
And I am very hopeful for season 2.
Matt?
Well, when season 2 comes out and is likely better received than this, because it always takes a little while for any Star Trek to find its footing, I'm probably going to regret this. But like I've been saying, it is what it is. And I love all Star Trek. And I can't think of a better Star Trek Picard I've seen than this Star Trek Picard, because it's the only Star Trek Picard that exists, and I love it. So I'm giving it a 10 out of 10 for being the best it can be, because I don't know of a better one.
Fair.
And that might change when season 2 comes out, but right now I have nothing to compare it to.
I'm also going to go with, I think a 7 out of 10 is fair. I was going to go lower, but during this conversation, I think you guys have pushed it up from what may have been a 5.5 or a 6.
I'll take it.
There were a lot of really good moments that got me for sure as a lifelong Star Trek fan, and I'm also looking forward to season 2. I'm hoping they maybe learned some lessons or figured some stuff out. Season 1 of any series is never the best.
Yeah.
Star Trek Discovery season 2 was far superior to season 1, and I loved it much more. So I'm gonna go into season 2, episode 1, with my arms wide open. Timba, his arms open.
Yeah,
I'm very looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think there's actually a good reason to look. Like the showrunner was very active on Instagram and everything, like responding to fans every week as the show came out. So they're clearly looking at feedback, and they know what people liked and what people didn't. And at the same time, they're kind of standing by their creative vision. Like with certain things that people hated, they're like, no, that had to happen. Sorry you didn't like it, but that had to happen because that's what makes sense for the story we're telling. So I think we'll get a pretty good compromise where it'll still keep its vision, but things people didn't like will probably be ironed out. And we know we're going to have Guinan, so...
Yes.
Guinan confirmed. The Doctor from Voyager rumored, which if you get the Doctor and Seven in a scene together, I'm sold.
For sure. So I'm going to wrap it up with one of what I think is Picard's most delicate and heartfelt, well-written sonnets or poetry, if you could call it. Tea, Earl Grey, hot.
Well spoken.
Bye.